Hello and welcome to Moral Side of the News, our weekly discussion of today's top stories from a moral, ethical, and religious perspective. I'm Sean Kalin with the WHAS Crusade for Children, and I'm joined today, as always, by a distinguished panel of local religious leaders. Reverend Chad Hayes, Radiant City Church. Reverend Dr. George Wasson, Faith Point Church. Rabbi Stan Miles, Louisville Melton School. Father Joe Graffis, Archdiocese of Louisville. And Reverend Sally McLean, Christian Church Disciples of Christ. We begin this week with the Capitol Hill hearing focused on the origins of the COVID pandemic. Dr. Anthony Fauci called before Senate committee invoking his Fifth Amendment right more than 100 times.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, the man millions of Americans turn to for answers during the COVID pandemic.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Today refusing to answer a single question from the Senate's Homeland Security Committee, accusing the Republican chairman, Senator Rand Paul, of having an unhinged obsession with him.
The sole reason he is calling me before this committee is to get me to say something, anything, that could vindicate his repeated public pledges that I end up, in his words, quote, behind bars.
In 3 hours, Fauci invoking the Fifth Amendment more than 100 times.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer.
Paul at one point threatening to kick Fauci's lawyer out of the chamber.
I said, sit quietly, you are not recognized. Another word and you're gone.
About a minute later,
security, please remove him from the room.
The 85-year-old Fauci, who served in government for 54 years and has testified in more than 200 hearings, sitting stone-faced as Republicans needled him.
Nothing says honesty like taking the Fifth, huh, Doc? Let's try something. What day of the week is it today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie are you wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer.
Paul pushing Fauci on whether he covered up the origins of COVID. While most scientists believe the virus likely jumped from an animal to humans, some U.S. intelligence agencies conclude it more likely leaked from a lab in Wuhan, China.
It's against the law to obstruct an investigation of Congress. There will be repercussions to your refusal to testify today.
Fauci insisting Paul is out to embarrass and intimidate him, pointing to the release of his personal diaries, which were discovered and handed over by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. In them, Fauci reflecting on his exploding fame as the virus spread, writing, "I am the most famous and talked about person in the country and one of the most recognizable in the world." The doctor describing his interactions with celebrities, including Julia Roberts, Kim Kardashian, and Barbara Streisand, who once called him for vaccine advice.
He loved every newspaper profile, every photo shoot, every fancy dinner with the elites.
Democrats defending Fauci, saying he's being turned into a scapegoat.
The campaign to vilify you, Dr. Fauci, is just one part of this larger campaign against science and facts, a campaign that has made Americans less safe.
So panel, your thoughts with public trust shaken by events such as COVID-19, the ethical responsibility of those in situations that can have power to respond and answer questions.
I mean, I think part of it is there's so many issues right now in our country that need to be dealt with, whether it's war or affordability and all those kind of questions. And this seems to be a distraction. I mean, I think we do need to find out whatever information we need to do about COVID, and especially to protect ourselves from the next pandemic, whatever it is. But it seems like we're moving backwards in terms of protecting ourselves, and this doesn't seem to be helpful. I don't like the Fifth Amendment necessarily as an answer, but I certainly can understand why in these circumstances he used that. But becomes a political game, and that's not what we need right now.
We don't need any more games. The time for games is over. What we need are human beings cooperating with other human beings and trying to make some sense out of this crazy world we live in. Dr. Fauci was, to me, an incredible hero and a source of comfort in a time when we really didn't have any answers, when people were dying by the score, and we were being told all sorts of things that just didn't add up. And somehow Dr. Fauci made sense. And my heart goes out to him. Why does he need this at this stage in his life?
I think the challenge, one of the many challenges in there, is that the perspectives are really all across the board, is that you come with that perspective of him being really one who speaks truth. And I actually come with the perspective of just the complete opposite, because it seems to me that the more we dig into this, the more we see both what he said and what he did, what he wrote about, what he professed, is that it wasn't really backed by science. And I think we're discovering a lot of things where we were just not told the truth. My hope of what comes out of this is we will be able to set up some parameters and some systems and procedures that doesn't give a person as much power, the ability to speak as he did. We're finding his diaries conflicting with what he said in public. We're discovering things where, he really was at the center of getting schools closed down in New York and also California. Private conversations that he would say one thing to them and he'd say one thing on national media. And I think that this has a great word for us to say about the truth, about speaking and telling the truth, even when we don't like it, even when it hurts. I quite frankly, I don't believe anything the man said, and that's where I'm coming.
I think as a leader, when I go through just trying situations, circumstances, tests, and leadership, or when an organization goes through something like that, or in this case, the nation goes through probably the greatest test that this nation's ever faced with the virus and dealing with that, I do think there's great value in looking back, reflecting, investigating, to try to find out what was done. Did it work well? What can we learn? What can we learn going forward? There's wisdom in that. So I think the process that we're going through is important. I think we need answers. A lot of things did not add up. I was at a university campus over the weekend, and it was a basketball camp, and the coaching staff was talking about how the pandemic affected their entire program for the last 6 years. And the coach specifically talked about how so many of the things that were required of them did not make sense and were unhelpful, and in fact hindered and set back students and the program. And so I think looking at what was done, good, bad, ugly, learning from that, how do we go forward? Because I think on the horizon there's probably another pandemic on the looming, and we don't know when that might be. It could be in the next year. It could be a decade or two down the road. But I think assessing this and learning out how we can do better, in the next situation, there's great value in that. So I think it's an important thing that we're digging into this and looking at trying to get answers for how everything was handled.
I'm going to say that most all of us sitting on this set would probably not be here if it weren't for science. Maybe there might be an exception or two. And I'm thinking back, if we're going to talk scrutiny, if we're going to talk going in and figuring out the facts, then why didn't we do this with AIDS? Why did we wait? Why did we blame those patients who got sick and say that they were the cause, that their behavior was bad, therefore they deserved this disease? Even the church wouldn't recognize what was going on with AIDS. So yes, then another pandemic came along, and we had the scrutiny because it affected more people. And, my feeling is that my husband and I both got sick right before the vaccine came out. If the vaccine had come out a little bit earlier, I think it was only a couple of months that it came out, I think maybe his life could have been saved. So I'm looking at the value of the people who benefited from not getting quite so sick, being able to survive, even though not every person could endure the vaccine as well as some of the other people did, because each human body is different. So my take on this is that there are fewer young people who are going to want to go into public service, who are wanting to go into science, who are wanting to lead us, because the scrutiny and the agony and even the threats against his children are not okay. That's not okay with me. And so I think that, perhaps we are a little hypocritical.
I mean, I agree with that. 1 million people died from COVID. I mean, that number just is overwhelming to me. And obviously, science wasn't sure about a lot of things too. And science is not always an exact science. But we need to have the best advice we can. I mean, I think a lot of mistakes were made. I agree with you. It would really be nice if there was a bipartisan, non-political investigation of all of this to try to find the real truth. We can talk about Dr. Fauci lying. Lord knows many of our politicians lie all the time. And so it's hard to find out what is real truth today. Yeah. And what are the real facts from a lot of different sources.
I think he had an opportunity actually to vindicate some of that. Instead of 111 times saying, I'm not going to answer that question, I'm taking the fifth on this.
I think he's already answered those questions repeatedly.
I know, but what the evidence is showing is that he hasn't really answered those questions. And he's answered those questions in one way to one group of folks and in another way to another group of folks. There's a lack of consistency in there. We as ministry leaders know that what we tell to our folks, we tell the same story to the people over and over again, because our word is really important to us. Integrity is one of the hallmarks of what it means to be a person of faith, right? And so my challenge is that I keep seeing and I keep hearing more and more things that he just hasn't told the truth. And I think that because he had what many have described as the auto pen pardon beginning in 2014 from the Obama administration, where President Obama said we're going to put a hold on any gain of function research, and then it gets outsourced to China. Like, why does his pardon go clear back to 2014 and not to the pandemic, quote unquote, era? I just think there's so much in here that he really did have the opportunity, because he's been pardoned. So he could have told the truth, and lots of law scholars are saying he can't even plead the fifth on this because he's already been pardoned on this. So just tell us the truth.
I'm trying to remember, did he tell the truth about drinking bleach? Did he tell people not to do that? Or was that just recommended by someone who wasn't a physician?
Well, I think we're getting, Sally, and quite honestly, we're getting off task there. This is a man who is the highest paid public official who even made more money than the president. He was a top, quote unquote, expert. And he, if there's anybody, we could comment all day long about some of the quips and the things that other people say, but that's not this scientist. This scientist who is supposed to speak from scientific fact as far as we know it. He just didn't tell the truth.
I think it goes back to the question of Jesus standing before Pilate, and Pilate says, what is truth? I think truth is really depending on different perspectives. Somehow I think I don't know the answer completely to that question. What is truth?
For me personally, it's Scripture. That's where my worldview is shaped and based. And in light of that, his behavior is concerning to me. The preemptive pardon, the inconsistencies, him saying things in public, writing things completely differently in private, and then the need to get on that stand and just plead the Fifth Amendment 111 times. To me, that just totally erodes trust. We need to have confidence in our leaders, whether that be in the church, religious leaders, or civil leaders, federal government, wherever they're leading. We need to be able to trust. And the Bible makes it clear that when there's truth, it can be brought out into the light. But men love darkness to hide evil deeds.
Do you keep a journal? Because a lot of clergy keep journal. And would you want your journal read in public?
I would hope that my life in private would be consistent with my public life.
I would hope so too.
Well, and I think with all due respect, you know, the President of the United States pleaded Fifth Amendment many times as well. So you can't always assume that pleading the Fifth means I'm lying. I just think this has gotten into a political thing. You know, again, I wish there had been, I think we do need some discussion about all this. On the other hand, I mean, depending on what is truth, there are so many people that knew Fauci while 50 years in government service, was highly, highly respected by people. Why is that? As a great scientist and a communicator. So I don't know, I think there are things that need to be investigated, but how do we do this in a proper way, in a healthy way for our country, and not try to get it all messed up with the political consequences of all of this?
I think what we saw when he was before the committee, I think he pled the Fifth simply because this was a man who was terrified and circumspect. And that was the only path that he saw.
Well, that's what his lawyers told him.
Yeah.
We'll see where it goes, because he's going to be apparently held in contempt of Congress, and it's a story that's going to be before us probably for the next week or two as it develops. So.
Not the only one being held in contempt of Congress these days.
Yep. So we'll turn now to data centers. We haven't discussed data centers on the show yet, and they've been in the news, several news stories over the past couple weeks. So your thoughts, as the demand for artificial intelligence and cloud computing grows, so does the need for these massive data centers that consume significant amount of land, electricity, and water. What moral responsibilities do communities, governments, and technology companies have to balance economic growth and technological advancement with the environmental stewardship and quality of life for nearby residents? We have about 10 minutes left in the show.
I've been trying to figure out what the data centers do or don't do. And of course, I'm sure that they do many things that are positive. But I was talking to someone who was involved in the situation, had lived near a data center, and I said, well, what's the big deal? And she said very simply, how would you like to live in an environment that whenever your windows are open or you leave your house, you walk into your backyard and there is this constant hum? For the good they do, I don't think that they should be where they cause a constant hum for the people who are living there. And there surely must be a place or a way to put these data centers in spaces where they don't intrude either ecologically or psychologically on the people who are nearby.
And are there emissions? Does anybody know the answer to that? Do they emit some sort of...
There's some questions about that. Let's say environmental concerns. I really think that Jefferson County and the Metro Council is trying to look at this in Louisville and where they're placed. And at least in watching that discussion, the environmental issues, I think, are incredibly important. Not only where does the wastewater go? And there's a lot of water that's used. Who pays for the water? If they need 50 million gallons of water a day?
Yeah, Joe, that's something that when the whole thing came out, they were talking about our water bills could go up exponentially.
And
I don't even own stock in it.
Well,
I mean, why would my water bill go up because of this?
Because
I've heard said that one of these plants was going to use as much electrical power as a city of 900,000 people. That's just about as big as the Louisville metro area. So huge tap on electricity. and resources. They don't seem to provide a lot of jobs for the community. I've heard that maybe as few as 20 jobs in the actual data center to keep things going and working. And so a little bit of construction work, but usually, like if they were to build one here regionally, the construction companies, a lot of them would come from out of a region to work. So it's not really bringing any kind of livelihood or jobs to our area, anything like that. So there's a lot of downside to it.
I think one of the difficulties in there is that all of that data center is tied to technology, right? And you know what? If we don't do it, again, I don't have the answer. I don't know where they need to go. But what I do believe is we can't outsource them. You know, if going back to the prior conversation about the COVID pandemic, is that we learned just the danger of outsourcing things from antibiotics to toilet paper, right, and everywhere in between, is that if we don't figure out a way to work with the data center and the AI and all the requirements that it's going to do, if we don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. And if somebody else does it, you know, you control the data, you control a lot. And so I even heard on the news yesterday that there are some ways of, they're trying to figure out how can you recycle the water through them. There's a new kind of atomic kind of power source that is a micro to a huge atomic plant kind of deal. We've got to figure out a solution to this because we're not going to go backwards in data and artificial intelligence. It's only going to go forward. And we all know, because we all experienced, if we outsource the present and the future of what's happening in our world, that is going to put us in a very precarious position. I think that's a very good question. I just think that, like AI itself, as our Holy Father Leo XIV has said, we need to look at protections for people. And I mean, I think in order to establish this, as many communities are trying to do, what's the size? I just think there needs to be some regulations, and that gets some people upset that you're having any government regulations, but we do it as parents, we do it in everything else. We do it in schools, we do it in the military. You've got to have some regulations to protect the innocent in all of this kind of stuff. And I think we're moving so fast sometimes, just like an AI, just like the internet's a great thing. I mean, the information we get now is, whether it's accurate or not, is one question, but it's amazing, and yet it's also very hurtful in terms of what it can be, how it can be misused. So I think the regulations that many of these counties are trying to do, I think they're late in the game getting to it. Probably should have been in this earlier, but I think it's a moral obligation.
I think I come from a different perspective. I grew up on a farm, and I love the land. And I hate to see all of our good farmland taken and used for something like this. Obviously, this data center has to be close to water somewhere, or you don't function. You have to have plenty of water to do that. And I just want to be mindful of our environment and make sure that there's some concern about not taking all our good land for something that, I don't know, this living in Shelby County and watching Shelby County develop and develop and develop is really kind of hurtful. And it's also, if you read any of Wendell Berry, it's also a way of life and the smaller communities and the ways of life that they had and they cherished. And that seems to be a topic in his book in dealing with that kind of loss of community. So I'm hoping that we will figure this out so that we can make the best possible plan to put these in situations that cause the least harm.
And that speaks to our faith tradition, right? That we are supposed to be the best stewards of the land. I think we agree this time, Sal.
I don't think so. Let me think of something. I'll see what I can come up with.
That we are supposed to steward what God has given us and take good care of it. And you know, we don't want to plunder it and make a disaster
Southern
zone of it.
Indiana is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And you don't want to ruin it with big centers or whatever else you want to stick in there, because it's just lovely country.
Yeah, it's just figuring out that balance in there, right?
Shelby County is too, but
just trying to figure out if we don't do it, somebody else is going to do it, and if they do it,
I'm not
they're going to
disagreeing, yeah.
control a lot of power, and there's going to be ideologies that are going to be significantly opposed to who we are.
Yeah, the information. It's not an easy question.
Yeah.
No, and you don't want.
Most moral questions are complex.
And you have to figure out some of these things first before you start to build and tear up the land. I think you need to find out if it is dangerous to have it close to you. Does it create a disease, because we have a history of finding out after the fact that something has happened to people who live close to any kind of huge facility.
And that constant hum.
It's not a note just playing in your head.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go out in the country and actually sit on our road and there would not be a car for hours.
Oh, right.
And where is that now? Where is that? Where is that sense of peace that we all need, that the land provides, I think?
And I think, the issue is, do you put them in the cities or do you put them out in the country? And all the questions that I raises, which are in a city where they're trying to put the one in Louisville, is very close to a lot of housing, schools, all that kind of stuff. I think that needs to be regulated in some way, shape, or form, but it's a dilemma. If we can't do it in a city, where else do we do it?
Well, I mean, there is poor land, but you still have to have water.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like so many other things, right? We all know we need it, but nobody wants it. And just trying to
Not in my backyard.
Right. Trying to figure out how do we balance that given the constraints that we have.
Very good discussion today on two topics, and I'm glad you two agreed.
It took a while, didn't it?
We have to mark that down.
I do.
Good show,
Write
but
that
it's
down,
it's an
Only because
example
I'm here.
of what this show is all about.
Absolutely.
We have difference of opinions, and we model how to have those conversations at the dinner table. So thank you for a great conversation today, as always, and thank you to our panelists, Pastor Chad Hayes with Radiant City Church, Reverend Dr. George Wasson, Faith Point Church, Rabbi Stan Miles, Louisville Mountain School, Father Joe Graffis, the Archdiocese of Louisville, and Reverend Sally McLean, Christian Church Disciples of Christ. Thanks for watching and listening to Moral Side this week. Join us again next week for an all-new edition of Moral Side of the News.